Hey, what is up guys? This is Mischief from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. So we are at a pretty busy point in terms of things happening with Yu-Gi-Oh! In general. We have Cyberstorm Access reveals coming up soon, as well as everyone speculating that a new ban list should be dropping within the next couple of weeks. So before we jump into some of that content later on this week and next week, we're going to touch on a few cards that are trending on the market right now because of other things that are happening, either with the meta or new support that is coming out now and being revealed in the OCG. Things change quickly, so I do want to make sure that you guys are aware of these price movements so that you can act on them as soon as possible. Let's get started. So the first two cards we're going to take a look at are going to be related to the same thing. The first one here being Rank Up Magic Astral Force. Astral Force is an interesting rank up magic card where you target one of your Xyz monsters with the highest rank and then turn it into another monster from your extra deck with the same type and attribute, but that is 2 ranks higher. Now this card hasn't seen a ton of competitive play in the past. I think that at one point it was used to turn Dante into Constellar Pleiades, but its usage has been pretty rare and infrequent. However, we actually just had a couple of new Pearly cards revealed to be coming out in Duelist Nexus, and among those is a rank 2 fairy Xyz monster, a Pearly Noir. Interestingly enough, the deck can use Astral Force to turn Noir into Ghostrick Angel of Mischief, a Ghostrick rank 4 Xyz monster with a win condition effect, where you win the game if it has 10 materials attached to it. Now I'm not too sure if this is really going to be all that good. It definitely seems like more of a gimmicky thing that you could try to do at your locals, rather than being a top tier strategy that you're going to be able to pull off consistently at a large event. But the fact that it can be done and doesn't really seem all that difficult to pull off is pretty interesting. So with Astral Force, the card does have a bunch of different printings, and most of them, even the holos, are still under $1. The card has an Ultra, Super, and Gold Rare printing, as well as commons. However, it's just the ultimate rares from Legacy of the Valiant that are now worth a few bucks, as we've seen them go up to around $6 to $8 now on TCG Player, with several copies having moved over the last few days. I do believe that the card has gone up in price in the past, and as an old ultimate rare, it certainly has room to go up in price even higher. I do think that if you can grab the card for maybe $3 or $4 still, picking it up isn't too bad of an idea so that you can offload it in a few months when the hype builds up for it a little bit more. Even with that though, you probably don't want to hold on to too many copies of this card for too long because it's fairly unlikely to see meta usage, and you kind of want to offload it relatively quickly so that you can take advantage of the temporary price spikes before it comes back down. The other half of the play that we just talked about is Ghostrick Angel of Mischief. So as we mentioned, Ghostrick Angel of Mischief is potentially a new win condition for the Pearly deck, winning you the duel if you have 10 materials attached to it. Now I don't think this should be too difficult to achieve. Pearly seems to be a deck that does a good job of getting a lot of materials underneath their boss monster. Now naturally, the rest of this card's effect is pretty Ghostrick specific. I don't think you'd run Ghostrick cards in your deck just for this card. Even if you did run it, you'd only be using it when you're about to end the game. However, Ghostrick Angel of Mischief has gone up slightly in price over the last couple of weeks. For quite a while, this card only had the one super rare printing back in World Superstars, quite an old set, but then the card got a common printing in OTS Tournament Pack 18, and that did a great job of cooling off the card's price a bit. Despite this, the supers are still the card's only holo printing, so they're naturally the printing that players want to pick up if they're going to try to play with it, especially since it's a waifu card. So over the last few weeks, the card has gone from being around $2 or $3 up to now at the $4 to $5 mark. I don't really think that this is something for you guys to invest in since it's more of a gimmicky option. However, I do want you guys to be aware, if you have some of your old OTS pack bulk that you happen to pull from your locals, those common Ghostrick Angels are 50-cent commons that have the potential to go up to a few bucks in the future, so they're definitely worth setting aside if you can find them still in your bulk. Alright, now this one is pretty weird. It is Windup Zen Meister. Now I was kind of confused when I saw this card's price, and it took a little bit of looking around to find out exactly why this card is up. So in Duelist Nexus, we're getting a really cool card called Fusion Reinforcement, where you reveal a fusion monster from your extra deck and special summon a material from your extra deck or graveyard that's listed on that card name, but you negate the effect of the monster that you summon. The idea is that you can use Fusion Reinforcement to reveal Naturia Exterio and then special summon out Naturia Beast. From there, you can also bring out Zen Meister, a generic rank 4 monster, who lets you flip a monster on your own side of the field face down, and then flip it back into face up attack position during the end phase. So with this, you can flip that Naturia Beast that you summoned face down and then back up, turning back on the effective Naturia Beast. This does seem really situational, but with Zen Meister being a generic rank 4 monster, you might be able to pull off a cute combo trying to abuse something like Parallel Exceed. So this is kind of a weird play, and it does seem like you need really specific pieces in order to be able to pull it off, but as we've seen in various formats in the past, Naturia Beast can be a card that can win you the game all on its own, particularly against spell-heavy decks, so maybe there are some situations where it is worth it. Now, regardless of how good this is though, Zen Meister does have a few printings that are pretty reasonably priced. I don't think that Zen Meister has ever seen competitive play before, but it has received multiple reprints, so the original Ultras, the Megatins Secret Rares, and then the common and rare printings from various battle packs are all still under $1. However, it is the ultimate rares that are quite pricey now. Believe it or not, the cheapest copy on TCG Player is $30. For the most part though, the card hasn't really moved for more than around like $15 to $20. There's one that apparently sold for $70, but I don't think that that's a legitimate sale, so we're going to disregard it. But yeah, because of how specific this application is and how unlikely it is that the combo will actually be pulled off consistently, I'm definitely recommending that you guys offload your Ulti Zen Meisters if you can, and just pick up a cheap secret rare if you're really tempted to try out this combo in the future. Up next, we have Rainbow, Overlord of Dark World. So Dark World got a nice boost with the Dark World structure deck, getting access to a lot of tools that have helped to improve the deck's overall consistency and power. The deck isn't tier 1, but it has a lot of really cool tools and is definitely able to top at the regional level somewhat consistently. Now, unexpectedly, we did just have a new Dark World card revealed for a side set in the OCG, Colorless Chaos King of Dark World. This is another Dark World fusion monster, and it's pretty cool, destroying all cards your opponent controls on summon, also providing you a discard outlet and the ability to protect one of your own cards from being targeted by your opponent. So I guess this card might be useful situationally, but I don't think it's that amazing to be honest. However, in order to make colorless, you need to specifically use Rainbow, Overlord of Dark World, and 2 other Fiend monsters. Unfortunately, you can't use the redone version of Rainbow. That's an Over King, so you can't use it as a fusion material instead, even though it's much more useful. The old school Rainbow is unfortunate because its effect is only triggered if it's discarded by your opponent's card effect, allowing you to special summon it and then destroy either your opponent's back row or all of their monsters. Even though Rainbow was reprinted in the Dark World structure deck, it was never used and it's not considered to be a key piece of their core. However, the old printings of Rainbow from Strike of Neos are the card's only holo printings, and those have gone up because of the new fusion, as players want to bling out their decks just in case they decide to end up playing colorless. With Rainbow, the ultimate rares are crazy, up at $60 on TCG Player. For the Ultras, the lowest right now is $25, though I don't think they've actually sold for more than about $10, so that's probably a more accurate price for this card right now. To me, this card is an easy sell. I would definitely want to get as much value for this card as possible while it is so hyped up, since I don't think it's going to be seeing much play, and even if it did, the Dark World deck probably still isn't going to be much of a top tier meta threat. The next one here that I want you guys to just make note of is Runic Tip. In the current format, I feel like Runic is an engine that is just combined with absolutely everything, including Naturia, Sprites, and even Kashtira. A couple of weeks ago, we talked a little bit about how Runics appeared to be somewhat undervalued for such a splashable engine, and it turns out that the cards have actually gone up a little bit since then. Tip is of course a search card for anything from the Runic archetype, so it's a very important piece of the engine. A key detail is that it gets you any of the Runic interruptions for your deck, but it also means that when you activate that interruption, Tip is an extra card that you can put back to the bottom of your deck with Fountain, providing you with an additional draw. However, there are a couple of factors that should now affect how we look at the Runic cards. First, we do have a ban list coming up, and given how strong the Runic engine is, I think it's certainly possible that something from Runics is hit. I don't know if that would be Tip or something else, but I would expect to see just a small slap on the wrist for the strategy. The other thing to note is that Tactical Masters is confirmed to be included in the 2023 Megatins, so we do now have a set timeline for when we should expect the reprint to drop. Of course, we go through this every year as we expect core sets to be reprinted, right? So that doesn't mean that the card isn't going to be worth anything from here on out, but if you are not planning on holding on to the card indefinitely and you still want to be able to sell the card for value, you should have something of a plan in mind for when you're going to look to offload the card. For right now, the collector's rares are up around $80 to $90, and the ultras are up about $5 to $10 from the last time we looked, as they're currently between $35 and $40. Depending on how the next ban list looks, this card could either go up or down in price, depending on if the archetype will still be a solid engine in the next format. Alright, so this is a little bit of a weird card. It is Mischief the Time Lord, so a lot of you may not know what this is, as it's a bit of an older card, but the Time Lords are an old archetype consisting of level 10 monsters, and they all have some common abilities. With most of them, they can't be destroyed by battle or card effects, and you take no battle damage from battles involving that card. And then you have another effect that applies when the Time Lord battles, but the card is shuffled back into the deck in the following standby phase. Now, in Mischief's case, when it battles, it cuts your opponent's life points in half, so that can potentially be like a 4,000 life point difference early on in the game, and if you don't have a way to spin back Mischief or something like that, this can be an effect that is really difficult to stop your opponent from resolving. Now, of course, at the same time, the card is vulnerable to something like Infinite Impermanence, which is a very common card in the current format. So as far as decks go, I don't really see anything specific that would want to go out and abuse Mischief, but rather I think that this might be a card that could be sided for games that are going into time. Cutting your opponent's life points in half can be really big. If that's a 4,000 life point difference, that's something that basically no other single card is able to overcome. But even if you're at 4,000, 2,000 life points is still a really big gap. So yeah, I don't know if this is just that, or if there's something else that people are trying out. But Mischief would hardly be the first card that we've seen people playing specifically to win games in time. Mischief has just one printing. It was an ultra rare back in Battles of Legend Relentless Revenge, which came out back in 2018, so 5 years ago. It wasn't short printed or anything like that, but with just the one printing, each copy is now going to cost you about $7. Honestly, given the time rules, I thought we'd see a card like this spike a lot sooner, but the card has only really moved up in price fairly recently, so if you do have a chance to dig this card up out of your Hollow Bulk or your Hollow Bulk at locals, this, along with some of the other Time Lord cards, might be worth taking a look at and setting aside. And finally, to wrap things up, the last card we're going to talk about is number C105, Battling Boxer Comet Cestus. So in just a few months, we are going to be getting a set called Duelists of Explosion, which will provide support for the Volcanic, Salamangrate, and Battling Boxer archetypes. Of course, Battling Boxers are probably the least known of these archetypes, being an old theme from back in Lord of the Tachyon Galaxy. The deck was never all that competitive, but they were a simple deck that just felt like they would have been good if they'd come out maybe 5 years earlier. So actually, most of the cards from the deck are commons, and I think because of that, a lot of people assumed that we wouldn't see any buyouts for this archetype. However, one notable card that has spiked is Comet Cestus. This is a chaos number that deals damage when it destroys an opponent's monster by battle, and if it has a regular number 105 underneath it, you get an additional effect where you can detach a material to pop an opponent's card, and then if that card is a monster, you also deal direct damage to them equal to that destroyed monster's attack points. So yeah, overall, not like a game-breaking card by today's standards, but still a good one. The only thing I'm not sure of is, how exactly does the deck summon this card? Of all the lists that I've seen, I've only seen one list that even ran this card in the extra, and I'm not really sure if they had a way to summon it, so if you guys do know, please let me know down in the comment section. Either way, looking at this card, it's only a couple of dollars for either the original or reprint ultra rare, but for the ulti, you're looking at a whopping $40 per copy. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I am not expecting Battling Boxers to be doing anything good anytime soon, so you will definitely want to be moving any copies of Comet Cestus you have while they're hyped up. Alright guys, that is all we have for today's episode. A few odd ones today, but we really have some awesome stuff coming up soon. We should have the reveals of cards from Cyberstorm Access coming out this week, and then of course Tom and I are going to be doing our ban list predictions as well, and naturally from the ban list and Cyberstorm Access we should see a ton of movement all over the market, so be sure to stay tuned. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's market watch, please make sure that you let me know by slamming that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below, and also if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.